So the other day I made a video on content that was cut from Black Ops Cold War. Things, features, items that didn't make it into the final product. If you want to go and check that video out, I will link it in the description. In that video we spoke of a wonder weapon called the Ray Rifle. I'm sure by now you've all heard of that from other people. We also talked about how Nacht and Toten was supposed to be a singular standalone survival map, about how a Panzer soldat type creature was going to be another boss in Die Maschine, along with a tutorial mode, a jetpack, 5 upgrades instead of the 3 that we have in game, and a bunch of other things as well. So I've already covered all that on the channel. That came out a couple of days ago, but recently someone by the name of Arkham is Coming 2020 over on Reddit made a part 2 of even more content that was cut from the final version, not only of Black Ops Cold War this time, but also World at War, Black Ops 1, BO2, 3 and 4. There is so much content from all of these zombies games that didn't make it into the final cut. In fact, there is way too much for me to go over in this video, but what I am going to do is talk about all of the other Cold War Zombies content that I haven't spoken about in the previous one, all of the other stuff that's been added to part 2 of this list, and perhaps we'll go over some content that was cut from older Zombies games as well. So, as always, if you do go on to enjoy the video, don't forget to drop a like rating, make sure you are subscribed. Let me know your thoughts on these in the comment section below, but let's get into it. Here we go and enjoy. So reading off this list of more content that was cut from the final version of Black Ops Cold War, the first thing he says is the cut new Panzer for Die Maschine can actually be seen in a calling card. And if we take a look at this calling card, he's right. This is one you can get in the game right now, but you will see some of the creatures on here are not in zombies. Specifically, the Mecha Z. This is him in the middle. His arm has a machine gun attached to it. He looks like a buffer version of the Origins or the Horizon Panzer. Why this guy was removed from the game we'll never know, but considering they have a calling card on him, he can't have been an early project. They must have fully made him and for some reason removed him, maybe for a later map. Perhaps they already had too many bosses in Die Maschine, so we'll see this guy somewhere in the near future, but yeah, this is the Mecha Z Panzer. The next thing he says is some zombie types that were either cut or repurposed were a new mimic zombie, a summoner zombie, and a Russian mech. And yet again, if we go back to this calling card, we can see what looks to be the Russian mech zombie on the right, looking very similar to the Russian mechs that we saw in Gorod Karovi. There's also the splitters and the Megaton on there. What we don't see is the mimic zombie or the summoner zombie. The mimic zombie to me sounds really interesting. Would it mimic our movements whenever we walk? It walks. If we stay still, that zombie stays still. Or perhaps when we look at it, it stays still, but when we turn our back, it moves. I think that'd be really creepy, but maybe like the Mecha Z, the Mimic and the Summoner Zombies are something we'll see in the future, and we do actually get to see what the Russian mech would have looked like from this calling card. Anyway, moving on, he says, Cold War allegedly had a survival and a quest type mode, but they must have been cut. Now, I'm not 100% sure what he means by this. Surely a survival mode is what we already have. We are playing round-based survival modes in Die Maschine. How he's worded it though makes it sound like it was something else. And a quest type mode, when I think of that, I think of an Easter egg. Obviously, we do have the main Easter egg in Die Maschine, but perhaps a survival mode and a Easter egg or quest type mode were separate, whereas in Die Maschine it's kind of one. That one's confusing. The next thing he says is Die Maschine apparently had alternate endings. Now, this one's a big surprise for a couple of reasons. One, if it was to have alternate endings, I can't think what they would have been, because at the end of Die Maschine, our characters escape, we destroy the facility, and they leave on the chopper. It seems very straightforward, unlike in other maps, say Mob of the Dead. We had alternate endings kind of in that way you could break the cycle or choose to continue it. We also had alternate endings in Buried with the Maxis and Richtofen inside of the Easter egg, but I can't see how alternate endings in Die Maschine would have worked. We either escape the facility or we don't. Maybe when we escape the site, it wouldn't have ended up getting destroyed, or one of the alternate endings would have been to do with the Omega Group, whereas the one we see is Requiem. Since it's a new chapter on the Ether story, it's difficult to say what those other endings could have been because we don't really know too much about the story right now. But let me know your thoughts about that one in the comment section below, and I'd like to know why they cut them from the game. The next thing he says is the shield was supposed to come back at some point, but was cut. This is believable to me because we have an armor system, so I can see them originally wanting to put a shield in the game. The main purpose of a shield in zombies is to give us more health. We put it on our back. It's also to kill the zombies. But if you can imagine the armor system along with upgraded Juggernog and then having a shield as well, you can already take 10 hits with full armor and jug. So a shield would give you probably, I don't know, millions of more hits. It would just be very OP. I can see a shield being in the game before armor, and I can also see why they cut it. And the final thing to do with Black Ops Cold War Zombies is there was an Easter egg in the Maschine where you could find Nikolai's glove. Now, as of right now, no one's found it, so we can only assume that it's been cut from the final game. I heard about this a long time ago. I didn't want to speak on it because I thought it could still be in the game, just no one's found it. But by the looks of it, it has been taken out. Why? I'm not sure. Maybe they didn't want to add any Easter eggs into the Maschine that relate to Primus or Ultimus because we don't have any. Even though it is a part of the Ether story, there is no mention of Primus, Ultimus, or Victus, which is a little bit weird. They're still tied into this story at the end of the day. This is just the Dark Ether. Yes, they are dead, so maybe for that reason they don't want to bring them up. They're just trying to leave their stories to the side and start off this new chapter. But I would have liked to have seen just a tiny reference to Primus and finding Nikolai's glove in Nacht because he has been here. Granted, it's a different universe. That would have been awesome, but it does seem like they took it out. So that's all of the content that was cut from Black Ops Cold War. There is more. If you haven't seen my first video, I spoke on a few other things, so go and check that out if you want to as well. However, I did say we'd go over some of the stuff that was cut from older games, so starting off with World at War, and this is only touching the iceberg of cut content. You can imagine Zombies has been going on for, well, over 10 years since 2008. There is a bunch of things that didn't make it into the final version, but going over a few things for World at War, this one's fascinating because in a way it was cut from World at War but was added back in for Black Ops Cold War. There was a perk called Ammo-matic which was cut from DLC 3, and this perk would have given you more ammo. So whereas in World at War DLC 3, which was Derice, it would have been a perk machine that gives you ammo. It's weird because all these years later, we now have Black Ops Cold War where we have not a perk machine, it is a box, but we can still purchase ammo from it. Why they would have cut this from the game all the way back in 2008 or 2009, I think it would have been too overpowered, being able to buy as much ammo as you want. But now we come to Cold War where there is an ammo box and we can buy as much ammo as we want. And I actually think now if we had this Ammo-matic perk machine in our older CODs, it wouldn't have been overpowered and it would have been useful. I really like how you can buy ammo in Cold War. Anyway, moving on, the next thing he says, which a lot of people know about, is Kino der Toten, Moon and Call of the Dead was supposed to come in a DLC 4 for World at War, but were cut and moved to Black Ops. DLC 4 was cut due to Treyarch needing to work more on the Black Ops campaign, and because the DLC would have released too close to Modern Warfare 2. So there was supposed to be a DLC 4 for World at War. We only had 3 DLC maps in that game, that was Verrucht, Shinonuma and Derice, but there was supposed to be a 4th map pack that contained 3 maps, which would have been Kino, Moon and Call of the Dead. Now we know even earlier to this, Moon originally was Paris. There was supposed to be a zombies map that took place under the Eiffel Tower, however that was scrapped and instead we got Moon. But Kino der Toten was supposed to release on World at War, but was pushed back to a base map for BO1, and so was Call of the Dead. The Call of the Dead one for me is strange because that wasn't even the first DLC to release on Black Ops 1, it was Ascension, and whereas Kino kind of feels like it could fit on World at War, Call of the Dead and Moon definitely doesn't. So like all of these, that's a strange one. Maybe that's the reason why we got 2 maps for the start of BO1, Kino and 5. Would we have only had 1 if Kino didn't get pushed back? And then the next thing he says is Hellhounds were originally supposed to appear in Verrucht. The first time we saw Hellhounds was in Shinonuma, if I'm not wrong. It could have been Derice, my memory's going a little bit, but I'm pretty sure it was Shinonuma. He's telling us that they were supposed to appear in Verrucht first though. Also, Juggernog had a completely different jingle. It can be found in the game files, however, I'm not going to play it because it is leaked content. The next thing is Shinonuma was going to have an any gun chalk. I don't really know what he means by that. Is it like buried where we can draw any gun on the wall? If so, that's very advanced for the time, if they were trying to implement that in World at War. There's also some cut guns, which were the Sten, the Bren, the Leanfield, and the Potato. Let's just move on. There was a cut weapon called Brains, and it was a first-person zombie attack. This suggests players may have been able to play it as a zombie at one point. We can see evidence of this in the trailer, and also people were able to do this as a mod back in World at War, which does prove, yes, this was intended to be a thing in the game. We did eventually get it as turned in Black Ops 2, but there was evidence of them trying to add this in back in World at War. And then the final few things for World at War. First, mortar rounds were cut from zombies and cost 2,000. Originally, the Pack-a-Punch jingle was much longer and had a whole story. We have heard that. It does talk about the old blacksmith. which we now know is Jeb Brown. So that's true, it kind of told us who made the Pack-a-Punch back in 2008, even though it was only properly revealed to us in BO4. And then the final thing for this game, I'm not sure if this one's for multiplayer though, it sounds a bit weird, but it says there was a cut game mode called Payload. The game mode would have had the player escort a payload for a set amount of time. It sends several text strings. That sounds like a multiplayer mode, but for all the weird things that were cut from Zombies back in 08, I can also see this being a Zombies game mode. So there we go guys, that is it. That is all I have for you for today's video. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed. If you have, you know what to do. Drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest videos on the channel. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and I will see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.